This one's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's definitely a book that built Birth of Chaos, a series that built Birth of Chaos. But it's a tough one to talk because I feel it's not aged well. But that being said, it's still something that inspired me, for better or for worse. This is episode 4. My name is Victor de Almeida. I am an indie author about to publish my first full-length fantasy epic novel. Welcome, and let's go. Yep. That's right. The inheritance cycle. Wearing all black feels like I'm going to a funeral. Maybe it's because I feel like it's one of those books now that I guess, it's one of those series now that I guess you kind of don't know why you liked it so much. Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. God, Christopher, don't hate me. I absolutely loved this. I think I was also very inspired by the fact that he was a very young author. How old was he? 18 when he first published? Of course, we later came to find that I think his parents were editors and had contacts or whatever, so I don't know if being a Nepo baby helped him or not. But look. It fucking inspired me at that time. I haven't read it in probably over 10 years, I'd say more perhaps. But it inspired me. It inspired me a great deal. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. The Inheritance Cycle began in 2002 with Eragon, written by Christopher Paolini when he was just a teenager. What started as a self-published novel became a global fantasy phenomenon, ultimately expanding into a 4-book series: Eragon, Eldest, Brisingar, and Inheritance. Set in the world of Alagaësia, the story follows Eragon, a humble farm boy who discovers a mysterious blue stone, only to realize it's a dragon egg. When the dragon, Sephira, hatches, Eragon becomes the first new dragon rider in generations, flung into a centuries-old struggle against the tyrannical King Galbatorix. As Eragon trains in swordplay, magic, and ancient lore, he must also confront questions of destiny, morality, and sacrifice, hallmarks of the hero's journey. So this one's complicated to talk about, not because the author's done anything, thankfully, because nowadays, so it's not complicated because the author's done anything, it's complicated because it just hasn't aged well. At all. The thing about doing this kind of thing really is, I didn't start this to critique books, but just to sort of talk about the books that inspired me. And you don't want to critique it because, when you're about to release a book, you can't really talk if, your shit ain't the shit. Oops, I'm not sure I'm allowed to swear anyway. It's not like I'm going to be able to monetize anytime soon. These were massive books. Massive. I felt like I was conquering frigging Mount Etna or something like that. Not that I would hike, but anyway. That's how I felt. They were great books for what they were. They are relatively well-written YA fantasy that I guess for a lot of us whose first foray into reading properly, independently I mean outside of school, was Harry Potter. I think Eragon or the Inheritance Cycle series filled the gap nicely. I think it did a great job at that. I guess with time, there has been criticism that the books are derivative. And I think that's such a sort of complex way to look at it, in the sense that, well, what else do we expect from a 19-year-old or 17-year-old, however it was, that's writing a fantasy novel for the first time, who more than likely grew up in the time where Lord of the Rings was, the films I mean, was really the only contact most of us had with epic fantasy. What did we expect from that? For a lot of us, I think we're the same generation, epic fantasy or epicness really was Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Wars. Oh God, Star Wars, and never-ending story. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking when I'm thinking of this now. So it's going to be derivative. It's going to be derivative. I think it makes sense, and I think here's the thing. I think, as I said in my first episode, we all borrow. I've always thought that Gandalf is Merlin, and I've always thought that Dumbledore is Gandalf, and there'll be another sort of like character that is Dumbledore that someone else wrote, because we all sort of like borrow a bit from each other, so it's difficult, but I guess yes, this was very derivative, but it's very difficult not to be derivative as well when you're writing about dwarves and elves, and we associate that with Tolkien. It's tough. I don't know what else to say beyond that, really. Look, at the time when I picked up these books, I probably didn't even realize that it was derivative, so I think that's how we have to look at it, is did it do what it set out to do for the market that it was meant to do it for? Yes. Without a doubt. So with that, I think it was a good book. It's not a series that I think I will go back to, but I remember it fondly because it helped me to continue to want to be a writer. It actually motivated me in the sense that I thought, God, if this kid, he was around my age then, I guess, maybe a bit younger, is writing, why can't I? And that sort of like spurred me on at a time where personally I needed that sort of like flame to keep on going, and Saphira and Eragon kept that flame going for a very long time. I also think more than that at that time as well, I was really writing another fantasy novel which had a YA tone to it. So this really sort of like taught me how to try and write for that market. So that's why it's also one of the books that built Birth of Chaos, because there are pockets of YA within Birth of Chaos, even though largely I think it is a dark fantasy novel. So look, Birth of Chaos doesn't sound like Paolini. It's not an homage to Paolini, but it was a series that I picked up in a time in my life where I needed more influences, and this undoubtedly has influenced me. And therefore, The Inheritance Cycle is one of the books / series that helped build Birth of Chaos.
Bitch, I said what I said.
This has been episode 5. I think I said episode 4 at the start, but anyway, you saw the thumbnail in the description. As always, sample to the book is in the description. It's free. Grab a copy, share with friends and all that. Support an indie author,